So our subject class is AC 1101. It's conceptual framework and accounting standards. Needless to say, we will be discussing the conceptual framework for financial reporting and the various accounting standards. Okay, so please do not think that we will only be discussing conceptual framework. Conceptual framework would be a small part, around less than 5% of the expected coverage of this subject class. The vast majority of the topics to be discussed would be the different standards, the different accounting standards that are to be applied in the preparation of your financial statements. With that, I would want you to download your own copies of the standards class. You may go to ifrs.org and create your free account. And from there, you can download the unaccompanied versions of the standard class, meaning no annotations, no discussion. You're just given the full text of the standards themselves. Okay. I want you to have your own copies because I am hoping that you will find time to read the entirety of the full text of the standards class. However, we will be using a textbook class, which is a processed version of your accounting standards. Your standards are converted, our textbook had converted your standards into question and answer uh, presentation. Okay, unlike your standards, you will simply be reading their paragraphs of rules and procedures class. The standards are being converted into question and answers for you to have a right frame of mind in reading the standards. The textbook may be enough for our subject, but again, ultimately, I want you, one way or another, to be able to actually read the full text of the standard. And to do that, I want you to have your own copies of the standards class. Okay, you can create your own free account with ifrs.org. It's free for students who wish to have copies of the standard. The conceptual framework is also available there, and that's the first item I wish you to download uh, from the website because that would be the first topic that we will be discussing. Okay, and we will have to rely on those unaccompanied versions of the standard and the framework while waiting for your textbooks to arrive. I will advise you on how and when to place your order for the textbooks. And I always start the orientation for this subject class by comparing it with with your three other major subjects. Okay, your major subjects this semester would be this one, AC 1101, AC 1102, which would be your is that your obligations and contracts class? Law and obligations and contracts. AC 1103 would be your management science. AC 1104 would be your accounting for partnerships. Okay? And I always tell students that out of the four class, this should be considered as the most important, which I will explain later on. Okay, our subject should be considered as the most crucial class and should be given the preferential treatment and attention it deserves. Now, why do I say that AC 1101 would be the most important out of the four major subjects that you will have this semester? One reason would be that AC 1101 class would be relevant in at least three board subjects class. As currently designed, the board examination for certified public accountants will have the CPA licensure exam has 6 subjects class. And I'm telling you, this subject, the topics to be discussed in this subject, are going to be relevant in at least 3 of the 6 board subjects class. Compared with your AC 1102, uh, your law and obligations and contracts may uh, set the foundation, may serve as the foundation for your other business laws class. To some extent, we can say that AC 1102 would be independent of your other law subjects, whereas AC 1101 would be closely connected with your other accounting subjects down the road. Uh, your management science class would only affect one board exam subject. Your AC 1103 will only affect one board exam subject. Your AC 1104 could also affect only one board examination subject class, which would be your advanced financial accounting and reporting. By the way, AC 1101 would be under financial accounting and reporting class, which is one of the 6 board exam subjects. Okay. Your management science will be under your MAS, Management Advisory Services, which is another board exam subject. As mentioned, your accounting for partnership would be under your advanced financial accounting and reporting, which is again another board exam subject. Uh, your AC 1101 again is under financial accounting and reporting. But aside from financial accounting and reporting class, it is very relevant in 2 more board exam subjects. Specifically, your accounting standards are very important for your auditing and for your advanced financial accounting and reporting class. In auditing class, you're basically checking whether or not the financial statements prepared by the audited entity are compliant with the accounting standards. Basically, you will be determining whether the accounting standards are applied correctly or whether or not they are applied in the first place. And for you to know, for you to be able to determine whether a financial statement is in conformity with accounting standards, you must first have a knowledge on the accounting standards. Without any knowledge on the accounting standards class, you cannot be expected of knowing whether a financial statement is compliant with your accounting standards. And that is why I say that our subject will also be relevant in your auditing. Although auditing as a subject will involve your auditing theories, your auditing procedures, but ultimately, for you to know whether or not a financial statement has complied with accounting standards, it is understandable that you are expected to know first your accounting standards. Now, many students, class, first year students, would think that at this stage, that your most important subject would be your AC 1104, your accounting for partnerships. Why? Primarily because out of your 4 accounting subjects class, out of your core subjects, only your AC 1104, only the accounting for partnerships will involve debit and credit. And especially if you came from the ABM track, your predisposition is that your major would have to involve debit and credit. That's the exposure that you have. Okay, accounting should involve debit and credit. Now, out of your 4 subjects, only your accounting for partnerships will include debits and credits. This subject will not involve any debit and credit. We will just be talking about the requirements provided in the standard. Okay, and basically, the concern of the accounting standards class is to tell us what amounts, what information should be presented in your financial statements. Now, do we need the debits and credits to arrive there? The answer is no. Your debits and credits would only lead you, it's only a mechanism or tool for you to be able to monitor the balances of your accounts, your assets, liabilities, income, equity, income, and expenses. Okay, but accounting standards are not very concerned with how we arrive at the ending balance class. Accounting standards are not very concerned with how we arrive at the amount that is to be presented in the financial statements. It is simply concerned with telling us on how to treat certain transactions and on how to measure, how to present, and on at what amount our assets, liabilities, equity, income, and expenses are to be presented in the financial statements. Meaning, accounting standards are very focus on the end class, which is the preparation of your financial statements. Whereas your debits and credits class are only steps towards arriving at the amounts to be reported in your financial statements. So here our goal is to know the rules, to know the requirements that must be complied, that must be followed in the preparation of your financial statements. Uh, but before discussing the accounting standards, we will have to talk about the conceptual framework first. Okay. But going back to the comparison of our subject with your other major subjects this semester. Uh, Again, one of the reasons students would feel that accounting for partnerships is the most important, it's because you will be dealing with debits and credits there. You would feel like accounting students because you're dealing with debits and credits. Okay. But that being the case, why would I still advocate for our subject as being the most important? You should be aware at this point, class, that for you to complete and finish the BSA program, you will have to take three parts. Parts meaning program advancement readiness test. You have to pass these examinations for you to for the department to be able to say that you are ready to advance in the accountancy program. Okay. Now, your accounting for partnership being under AFAR, being under accounting, advanced financial accounting and reporting, that's AFAR. AFAR will be under part 3. If I'm not mistaken, either part 2 or part 3. But if I remember it, I'm now sure. It's part of your part 3. Okay, advanced financial accounting and reporting is one of the 2 subjects covered by part 3. Whereas class AC1101 being under your financial accounting and reporting is one of the 2 subjects for part 1. So based on proximity alone, class, these subjects should be given utmost importance. You need not be good with accounting for partnerships and you will still be able to reach 4th year so long as you're good with financial accounting and reporting. Okay, and one way towards that goal is being good with accounting standards. Okay, so your part 1 would be your business laws and your uh, FAR. Okay, so based on proximity alone, okay, part 1 is the nearest and it should be given your utmost importance, especially class. That only part 1 has no retake. Once you pass part 1, you're guaranteed to finish the accountancy program. Okay, there are retakes for part 2, there are retakes for part 3. I think you're entitled to 3 takes all in all. But for part 1 class, it's a single elimination. If you do not pass part 1, then you will not be able to advance in the accountancy program and will be advised to take up another course. So from that alone, it should be very easy to convince you that the subjects covered in part 2 and part 3 are not as important as the subjects covered in part 1. Okay? Your management science, which is under management advisory services, is, I think, part of part 2, is a coverage of part 2. So your other accounting subjects, except for your business law, are a distant concern. Okay. And with that being said, you might say, does that mean our business law, our law on obligations and contract would be as important as conceptual framework and accounting standards? Of course, I would still say no, because your law on obligations and contracts will only affect business laws class, which is only one subject. And once you're done with it for part 1, then it will not resurface anymore. But for accounting standards, for conceptual framework and accounting standards, again, as I mentioned, it will also be relevant in advanced financial accounting and reporting and in your auditing. Auditing, I think, is in part 2. Uh, and even to some extent, class, accounting standards is relevant also in management advisory services. Okay, so the topics covered in this subject class will touch or will be relevant in a lot of board exam subjects. Uh, that's why I would tell you that this should be considered as the most important subject that you will have this semester. And then and the setup class is that in this subject we will be discussing, we will try to discuss all accounting standards that would be discussed in your future intermediate accounting subjects. Okay. After this subject class, you will have intermediate accounting 1 next semester. Then second year first semester, you will have intermediate accounting 2, and second year second semester you will have uh, intermediate accounting 3. Now I'm telling you that now because the topics covered in IA1, IA2, and IA3 class will be the same topics covered in this subject. And I hope you get the significance of that statement, class. Topics covered in 3 subjects are to be discussed in 1 subject this semester. So, but how does that work? In this subject, we'll only be dealing with theories, class, no computation, and that's one of the challenges of this subject. Many students tend to get bored. Many students tend to get disinterested in subjects not involving computation, class. Many students would not take pride in being good with subjects dealing with theories and concepts only. Okay? But I'm telling you to excel in accounting class, you have to be as good, if not better, in theories compared to computational subjects. Okay. So we will discuss all the theories, the basic, the foundational theories in this subject, and their application class in terms of numbers already would be discussed in IA1, IA2, and IA3. So just think of it, class, na if you will have difficulties in this subject, or if you will not try to retain anything from this subject, then you would already be lagging behind in your IA1, 2, and 3. You will be playing catch up. It will be very difficult for you to relate on the topics that would be discussed in IA 1, 2, and 3. And basically, class, AC1101, IA1, IA2, IA3 would be the coverage of your part 1 class. What does that mean? If all these 4 subjects comprise the coverage of one subject of part 1, if this would be the coverage for financial accounting and reporting in your part 1, then basically I'm telling you that the topics covered in this subject would be the topics that would be part of your FAR, that would be part of your financial accounting and reporting. Because IA1, IA2, and IA3 will just be an application of AC1101. So basically, the coverage here would be the coverage already for your financial accounting and reporting. Do I expect you to master everything, class? Do we expect you to master all the provisions contained in standards? The answer is no. Uh, the minimum expectation is for you to have basic knowledge and foundation for all the standards, class. You know the definitions. You would know the basic measurement and recognition principles. You would know the minimum disclosure requirements. Okay, we will not be dealing with amounts. I just want you to know when will this particular asset or liability be recognized, what would be the treatment for this particular uh, transaction, what must be presented in your financial statements. I hope you know that your financial statements are not composed of figures only. A big component of your financial statement would be the additional disclosures contained in your notes to the financial statements. And many of the requirements in the standards class are to be presented in the notes to the financial statements. And those are the things that are expected of you to know and remember. Okay. Considering fact that the coverage is very broad class, you are not expected to become masters at this point of the standards class. I would be satisfied class if you would simply continually expand your stock knowledge class. And that's simply the goal, to continually expand your stock knowledge. Many of you might have been very comfortable with cramming for your examinations before, but that's not smart. That's not enough for you to pass the board examination. That's not enough for you to do well in the class. It's not enough for you to do well in the program. And it's not even enough for you to just survive the program. You have to continue. Cramming would not be enough. Okay, you would have to have good foundation. You have to continually expand your stock knowledge. Basically, part one class would be your first encounter of a significant comprehensive exam. Okay, your midterm examinations, your final examination would be comprehensive also, but it's not the same as part class. Okay, as your part examinations would simply be very comprehensive. And I'm telling you as early as now that cramming would not be enough. You will have to have broad stock knowledge. So basically, that would be our subject. I hope I have emphasized the importance of our subject. And I want to advise you, class, that the 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 requirement on your part here would be very burdensome, class, because you will be required to do a lot of readings. And many first year students simply do not have the capacity yet, the ability to survive marathon readings. Uh, you will have to develop the ability to do marathon readings. Especially if I am talking from experience, class. I do not like reading. I don't like reading something I'm not interested in. And I cannot convince you to be interested in accounting provisions class. That is simply not realistic. Okay? It's more realistic for you to be able to finish novels class in a single night, but definitely it would be very challenging for you to read a single accounting standard from start to end in a single sitting class. Okay? You will have to convince yourself class. The motivation will have to come from you. The motivation will not come from the quality of the material you are reading, because what you are reading class will not entertain you class. Reading accounting standards will not be entertaining. So you will have to tell yourself to push on and carry on to finish the reading, because I'll be giving you a lot of reading assignments. And our assessment here would be more on checking whether or not you have complied with the reading assignments. So we'll be doing pre-tests, we will be doing oral recitations to check if you have uh, complied with the reading assignments. And I will not be there to monitor you doing the required reading. And of course, I don't expect your parents to do that for you. You have to convince yourselves to do the reading class. Will it be interesting? No. Will it be entertaining? Definitely not. Will you have to do it? The answer is yes, class, because this is the most important subject. That's one of the earliest, but also one of the most difficult hurdles you have to overcome. Class. Will you be able to do the required readings? And if the answer would be yes, then you have a good chance of doing well in the subject. You have a good chance of doing well in your intermediate accounting subjects later on. You will have a good chance of passing your part one. I'm not supposed to tell you this in the recently concluded part 1 class, meaning this is for those that have just enrolled as third year this school year. Only 23 passed class out of almost 300 in financial accounting and reporting. But the number of students who advanced to third year BSA class reached around, more than 100. I think because uh, their score in their business law was able to pull up those that were near the passing mark. Okay, the rule for part class is to average at least 75% and not to have any score on the two subjects below 65. If you score below 65 in any of the two subjects, then you will be disqualified. So even though 23 only passed, meaning only 23 have gotten 75% or better in the recently conducted part 1, only 23 passed in financial accounting and reporting. Uh, Around 100 students were able to enroll as accountancy students for the third year because their scores in uh, business law were able to pull up uh, their FAR scores. Okay, but of course, those who have gotten below 65% in FAR were automatically disqualified. So maybe you're thinking, I'll just focus on law and obligations and contract so that it will hopefully pull up my FAR in the future. But if you will do so bad in FAR class that you will get below 65, then you will not have any chance of advancing in the program. And the intention was not to scare you, class. The intention was to drive a point, which was to tell you that you have to give our subject the attention it needs. And you really have to will yourselves, class, to do the reading. That's around 80% of what I am asking from you, class. Just do the reading. Yeah, but I know that that's very difficult because I myself would have found it very difficult to do the readings if I was in your position. Class. Okay, but that's the surefire way of doing well in our subject and in all the other subjects related to our subject. Just do the reading. Okay, just do the reading. And this and at this point, your reading should not be simply passive reading, class. Your readings will have to have some form of retention, and that's why our textbook is designed in a Q&A format, class, because based on experience, students tend to remember more if the provisions in the standard are already uh, presented in a question form and the answer are the requirements stated in the standard. Because if you just read it as it is, as they appear in the standard, you would not be able to emphasize, you would not be able to appreciate the importance of the sentences you are reading. Okay, and in that way, I am positive that our textbook would be able to help you achieve uh, a reading that results in retention. Uh, so as I've already mentioned, I'll be giving you assigned readings. And if our textbooks will not be available by the time we will be having our classes already, I am advising you to download the copies of the standard, but first start with the conceptual framework because that would be the first topic, which would be the topic to be discussed Monday next week. Okay. Conceptual framework has, I think, 8 or 9 chapters class. We will discuss the first 2 chapters next week. So please read. Please read the first 2 chapters. You download the full text. Okay, do not rely only on summaries that you will find online. I want you to download the full text from ifrs.org. And with that, I am requiring you to bring 1/8 index card for next meeting class, which would be the basis for our recitation starting on Monday. Anyone who will not submit an index card on Monday will be considered absent for that day. Okay, so everyone should bring already their index cards by Monday. And then we will have quizzes. We'll have pre-tests before the discussions and quizzes every after 2 or 3 topics. Okay. And then for pre-midterms, midterms, pre-finals, and finals would all be cumulative. Uh, but I may change my mind. But ideally, all our major examinations should be cumulative, meaning from conceptual framework down to the latest standard that is covered in our discussions. Because again, our goal here is to continually expand your stock knowledge. And with our textbook, with the full text of the standards and in your index cards, it's basically all the requirements for this subject. So again, the primary requirement is for you to do the reading. That's the most important requirement. Do the reading. Uh, for the grading system class, the 4 major exams would be given a weight of 20%, and everything else would be lumped together and given a weight of 20%. So pre-midterms 20%, midterms 20%, pre-finals 20%, final examination 20%, recitation, pre-tests, short quizzes will all be lumped together and will compose the last 20% of your final grade. Okay. Your midterm grade obviously would only be composed of your pre-midterms, midterms, and everything that would be given, every assessment that would be given during the midterms. So if you want that to be converted in terms of fraction or percentage, for your midterms class, 1/3 pre-midterm exam, 1/3 midterm examination, and 1/3 for the pre-test quizzes and recitation. Okay, but that would not really matter because ultimately your final grade would be computed in the manner I have just mentioned. 20% weights for the 4 major examination and for your class standing. We will refer to all the pre-tests, short quizzes, and recitation and assignments. We'll refer to them collectively as your class standing. Okay. So the 5th component of your final grade would be your class standing. And basically that would be it for the overview of the subject class. Okay. I have only one expectation, class. Just do the reading. Okay. Just do the reading. Will this subject be entertaining? No. Will the assigned readings be, will the standards be considered as page turners? Definitely not. Okay, but will you continue on reading? Yes, because you're required to do so, because you will not do well in the subject if you do not do the reading. And that should be your mantra, class. Just do the reading.